All right, friends and fans. I'm going to shoot a video today. I don't know, some people might find this interesting. Some people might think this is just a waste of time. If that's the case, skip it, go watch something else. Um, so I've got a bunch of my friends and fans that know me that are personal acquaintances of mine, not my Facebook followers. For those of you who are wondering, I don't have a Facebook page, so I don't have any Facebook friends. I know I'm a failure at life. Anyways, for those of you who do know me though, some of you have asked me like, okay, what's it like getting started and what's a typical day? And those of you who know me, friends and fans that are personal acquaintances of mine, you guys know this is not my full-time gig. This is my other life. I'm starting a business. I've been in the process of starting a business and bringing it along for legitimately doing everything according to licensing and everything. I've been doing that for about 6 years. Before that, I was doing it on the side, under the table, friends and family, that kind of a thing. So anyways, my full-time job, I work at a place where, I have a full 40-hour, sometimes 60-hour work week. And so all of the work that I do in my shop for my business for Greg's Mobile Automotive is after hours, on weekends, on my days off, things like that. So today I was fortunate. I took off a day. I had built up some comp time because of some overtime we'd worked where I work at. And it's not like it's a super secret squirrel thing about where I work at. There are some things that I do need to take in consideration. I'm gonna set you guys up here. Hopefully you can see me a little better. So anyways, there are some things that I do need to take into consideration about where I work. I work for a government facility, and I'm an inspector on the lines of stuff that we produce out there. We do vehicles and things like that. So that's enough. You guys don't really need much more of a description than that. Anyways, so I do that full time. I love my job. I'm really fortunate to be in a position now where I really do enjoy getting up and going to work. And that has not always been the case. But it's a good job. And so I'm fortunate because, when I first started looking at starting this business a few years back, my wife and I sat down, we talked about it. And, I had went to Iraq over the 2010, 2011 year. And when I came back, I had this in mind of starting a business, because I enjoy what I do as far as diagnostics and troubleshooting. I enjoy AC work, automotive AC work. I enjoy it a lot because it's not a super heavy duty job as far as having to tear apart, subframe and, doing all that stuff, pulling engines and all that thing. But there's a lot of technical in it, and I'm a technical guy. I like troubleshooting. I like solving puzzles and chasing things. And so anyways, and the reason why I sort of keyed in on doing refrigeration is because I live in a desert environment, and we literally have a very long AC season here. Most places. When I was in Iraq, I was speaking to a guy who was over there as a contractor. He had a shop that he owned back in, I want to say Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. And the only reason why he was overseas was because this was right after, 2008, 2009, the housing market had crashed. A lot of the economy had kind of taken a very, very sharp downturn. And he was overseas contracting to kind of maintain everything that he had going without having to lose his shop and everything else. So he'd been in business for a number of years. He'd given me quite a bit of good advice and some good kick in the pants as far as the direction I was going in. And so he asked me, we were sitting there talking one afternoon. He said, "What are you going to do when you get home?" And I said, "Well, I've been kicking around the idea of starting a business." And he was, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of looking at doing a kind of a mobile automotive AC business." And he looked at me and kind of had that weird look like, "Really? You're an idiot," And he said, "Well, you're only going to work a couple months out of the year?" And I said, "Oh, no. Where I'm at, people run their AC. I've had AC work that I was doing on the side anywhere from, March, April, all the way up until, November." And he's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I live in a desert environment." He's like, "Oh, okay, I can see where that would work." So anyways, that's what kind of got me keyed in on that, was because it was something that I could come back. I was pretty proficient at doing. I have learned a great deal since I started. I didn't start out being completely knowledgeable of every aspect of what I'm doing now. I have learned a lot, and the one thing that I have noticed is the more I learn, the more I have to learn. There's so much to do in this industry and in this particular niche that I've picked, because in addition to doing automotive AC, I also do diagnostics, check engine lights, electrical troubleshooting and things of that nature, reprogramming of ECMs, that kind of stuff. And I enjoy it. And it's funny because I have friends and a few customers who are very good mechanics, and they are all about the mechanical of it. Give me an engine, I'll tear it apart, I'll redo it, I'll do rings and pistons and da 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 da, and I can redo this, that, and the other. And I say, well, yeah, but what? They don't want to even touch the electrical. And it's not that they can't. I mean, like I said, these are very knowledgeable people, but they don't want to do it. And the funny thing about that is, I'm a complete opposite to that. I don't want to do the engine removals and so it's not that I can't. I grew up, and it's funny because I didn't grow up being super mechanical. My dad was a mechanic, very mechanical, and for the time that I was living in his house, I would be out there helping him. I remember he had an old Dodge D100 truck. And I remember standing inside the engine compartment on the ground and helping my dad. He was doing the timing chain. And so I remember pulling this whole assembly off and having room to kind of turn around inside the engine compartment and hand it to my dad. So I'd help my dad a little bit, but I never caught the bug. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I've seen with people that are, there's certain bugs in this industry that you catch on to. And once you get a hold of it, man, that's your thing. So for me, it wasn't the mechanical side of it. I can do mechanics, and I understand the concepts of it, and I understand it because I need to understand those concepts in order to do what I do enjoy, which is troubleshooting and diagnostics. Give you an example of that. It does me no good to perform a relative compression test on a vehicle using an oscilloscope and an amp clamp if I don't understand what those humps mean, and the fact that the reason why is because the compression increases as the piston comes high, as the starter is having to work harder. That's what I'm seeing on the oscilloscope. And if I just spoke all of this line of dialogue to you right now and you think I spoke Greek, well, now you kind of understand what I mean about needing to have that understanding of certain aspects. So anyways, I kind of digress here, but I really enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy my job. I'm fortunate that I have a day job that pays my bills, feeds my family, takes care of my medical benefits, and does all that. And that's how we got here. I'm sorry. I know I kind of took a rabbit trail there. So the reason why I started to say all this is because when I first came home, my wife and I discussed me starting a business, and I told her, this is what I want to do, and she said, okay. And her fear was because, in the area we live in, and I have no doubt in my mind, if you're watching this and you live anywhere in the United States, we've all seen failed mechanic shops. It happens. And it's not just mechanic shops. Most small businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's just a statistic that is a reality. And there's a very wide range of reasons why. So anyways, my wife looked at me, she said, okay, but I see all these shops around town. They'll open up, they'll have their doors open for 6 months, maybe a year, and then they're gone. And she said, what's going to be different about you? And I said, well, for one, I'm going to do a mobile thing. And if you're seeing what's behind me, you realize I'm no longer doing the mobile thing alone. I do mobile, and I'll talk about that. So anyways, I said, well, I'm going to do a mobile, and so we won't have the overhead. And I have a regular job. I'm not trying, I didn't go out. I didn't take on a huge chunk of debt. Now, I do have some debt now, and that's a reality of being in business, is if you're starting this business out, you're going to end up with taking on some debt in some form or fashion, but you have to be really super smart about how you do it, what you can handle, and not to get overwhelmed. And there have been some instances in the last couple of years where I've almost been overwhelmed, and I'm just I'm shaking my head like, okay, and it's hard. It's hard not to take on debt. But I think if you do it intelligently and if you do it with a very specific goal in mind, the first bit of debt that I took on for my business was in buying a very capable diagnostic computer. And I'm not a shill for any particular brand or company, but I spent a lot of time doing research. And for a guy like me starting out that doesn't have a large shop and doesn't have that budget, the brand that I chose and I've gone with and so far has been very, very capable was the Autel MaxiSys Pro system. Again, I'm not taking anything away from any other systems out there. And there are some others out there that I have had my eye on. I just haven't gotten to a point where I have cash flow to buy those. But those are definitely on the list. So anyways, I took on some debt there because I needed to finance that. I couldn't come up out of pocket with, the $5,000 that it cost me to buy that system. But I did take on some debt. And I just recently paid that off. And I'm happy for that. So there's always this debt thing. There's a cost of doing business. And so my wife was considering, okay, what about this? What about? So I just told her, I said, well, we'll give it a shot. And so then we started talking about pricing and things. And my wife is a great lady. She has put up with a lot dealing with me. We've been married for 30 years. We dated for 3 years prior to that. And that woman is a saint. And if you know my wife, if you see her after you see this video, just, if you see her somewhere, walk up to her and just tell her, you're praying for her. Anyways, so I said, this is what I want to do. This is how we were going to try and do it, And she said, okay. She goes, well, we started talking about pricing. And I said, she said, well, what are you going to charge? And well, and I wasn't really, I didn't sit down and write a business plan. And please don't take this as a how-to, because if anything, look at what I've done and how I've started and where I'm at and what I'm doing. And maybe look at some of the stuff I've done and go, okay, don't do that. Because this is what's worked for me so far. And it has not been a raging success, but I'm still in business and it's 6 years later after I legitimately opened. So I'm doing okay. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm still doing okay. So there we go. All right. So she's asking me about pricing. I'm like, well, and my wife, she looked at me, she goes, well, here's the deal. She goes, I don't care what you charge people. I really don't. She goes, but is this a business or a hobby? She said, you know the difference between a business and a hobby, don't you? And my wife is a very wise lady, and she asks things of me that she already knows, like she knows how to talk to me. Like I said, we've been together for a long time. And so she kind of asked it in that sort of a cute, sarcastic way that only she can pull off. And I said, yeah, I know. She goes, okay. She goes, well, because, a business makes money and a hobby costs money. So whatever you're going to do is fine. If it makes you happy and it doesn't break us, I'm all right with that. And so for the first couple of years, and even now occasionally, I will come home from the shop or from a mobile job and I'll look at her and go, well, today was a hobby day. And she just smiles and she knows, like, well, okay, didn't make as much money as I should have, or I didn't bill, or maybe I got into something and I had to pay more out because it cost me more to get out of it than it did to get into it. And if you've been in business or if you've done work for anyone and you haven't run across that, well, be thankful to whatever it is that you believe in as a higher power. Because I have been in this business for a number of years now, and there have been jobs that should have been straightforward, should have been a simple bing, bang, bang, and out the door, and I get my money, and whatever happens, happens. And I am one of those people that I am very, very adamant about. I will guard my reputation, and I will stand on my integrity. And if I tell you that it's going to cost you this much to do the job, and I get into it and I make a mistake, you're not paying for that. I am. I tell my customers and my friends and fans all the time, I pay for my education, my customers pay for my experience. And if you don't quite understand what that means, think about that for a minute and it'll come to you. I have paid for a lot of my education, and sometimes I have paid for my education on a job that I'm doing for a customer. Because I learned something in the process of doing a job that either something went wrong, and I had to learn how to get out of that. So anyways, My wife's been very, very supportive of this. It does take up a lot of my time, and it does cause me to miss some things. I balance as much as I can. I balance my home and work life, and I want to tell you this. If you get nothing out of this video other than this, if you're starting a business and you're doing it the way I have done it, which is trying to work a full-time job and do a business and maintain your family, it can be done, but be aware of the cost. And I'm not talking about the monetary cost. I'm talking about the cost of family and the important things in life. I'm doing this because I love to do it. And this is my retirement goal. Whenever I decide to retire from the job that I'm doing currently, this is what I'm going to come and do, because I want to be able to do something beyond my retirement. But it's much more important that when I'm retiring, I have a good family relationship. My wife and I have a great relationship, and it's been rough. It's not been all easy. Next month we celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary, but it's because I've worked at that as well. And so what I'm saying is if you're going to do this, by all means, be aware of all the costs. It's not just how much money you're going to need for equipment and licensing and getting set up, and that's not the cost. I mean, that is a cost, but it's not the cost. The cost comes in balancing between what you're trying to accomplish and being there for your family. I have a grandson, and as far as I'm concerned, he's the greatest person in the whole world. And so when I get a chance to spend time with him, I do. But, we get him every other weekend or so. He comes to our house and hangs out with us. And a lot of times on Saturdays, Grandpa's at work doing a job or doing whatever. But then there's times when my wife will say, hey, this last weekend, we did a camping trip with him. It was a one-night camping trip. He absolutely had a blast. It was a ton of work to get there and get set up and do everything that we were doing, because we tent camp. We don't glam. We're not glamping. We've got a tent, and we do have air mattresses and all that stuff. But so it's a process to get everything set up. Absolutely worth every moment of lost sleep, because he had the greatest time of his life. Him and his dad had a great time together. It was absolutely worth it. And so I know I'm kind of going off on several different tangents here. Again, if you've already turned off this video, so be it. If you're still here, all right, cool. Just be aware of the costs. That's my main thing here. So anyways, here I am. We're about 6-7 years into this, and legitimately, again, I was doing it kind of under the table for some people, and I'm not saying to do that. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying be aware of your state and local laws, because there can be some serious ramifications if you get caught up not doing this legally. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So I've been doing this for a while, but it is starting to bear some fruit. And that's another thing that I want to kind of touch on. Be prepared to see this through for a while. And be aware that there are going to be some setbacks, and there are going to be some nights that you're going to be in your shop or you're going to be in a customer's driveway, and you're going to be asking yourself, what in the bleep am I doing here? Is this even worth it? And that's a question between you and you. You know what I mean? I've had that conversation with myself, and here's where I am right now. So it is currently October of 2019. Like I said, I've been doing this legitimately for a few years now, and I am just now getting to a point where I have a steady workflow. The first couple of years I did this, it was, I would start in about March or April and start doing some jobs. And again, I was doing all this mobile, so I would travel to the next town over or anywhere here in this town and what have you, and even a little bit further sometimes. And it would start around March, and usually by about October, I was done. And so, November, December, January, February, I had about 5-6 months where I had downtime and wasn't really doing a whole lot, and it was okay. And I didn't really mind that so much. And here's the thing, and because at some point I'm going to make the transition from this being my part-time life to being my full-time life, right? And in order to do that, I've got to have a really good record of what a solid season looks like. So, obviously when I first started this, there was no way, like 6 months isn't enough, because it would be, 2 or 3 jobs here, 2 or 3 jobs there. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't, because at the time when I first started, most people just knew I did AC. So fast forward a couple years, and it started about 3 years ago. It really started going longer into the season. And I've had a few people that had realized that I do more than automotive AC. And so that kind of contributed to this going a little bit longer. And I remember a couple years back, my wife and I, we usually go in November. We go and do something to celebrate our anniversary. Last few years it's been camping. This year we're actually going to take a short little cruise. But so we always kind of plan on that. And, in the years prior to about 3 years ago, wasn't no big deal, because usually by this time in November, my job list is done. About 2-3 years ago, we had a trip planned to go up to June Lake and go camping. And I remember having to leave a vehicle sit in my shop that I was working on until after I came back. And the customer was very cool about it. I told him ahead of time, hey, there's gonna be this block of period of time where your vehicle's not getting touched, about, a couple weeks. And they were like, oh, no worries. Okay. Well, I thought, well, maybe that's just a one-off. And the reason why it was taking so long is because I ended up having to replace the ECM in this vehicle and reprogram it. And there was some extensive troubleshooting that got down to verifying, yes, it is the ECM. And so I got it in right before we left. When I came home, verified it, got it done, pushed it out. And then the next couple of years, I noticed, like, I've had vehicles all year round, all the way through January and into February, March, and different people hit me up, because more and more people have found out that I do things like ECMs and electrical troubleshooting and diagnostics and a lot of stuff that shops around town don't want to do, or don't do as well as they should or could. And I'm not knocking those shops. Please understand, this isn't a bash local shops video by no means. In fact, if you know me personally, I don't say a bad word about any of my competitors. There are only about 2 or 3 that I recommend if somebody asks me, where should I go for this? But I don't talk trash, because short of them just being completely dishonest and having no morals, it's hard to make money in this business, especially if you've got a ton of debt, you've got a building you're paying a mortgage or rent on, you've got utilities, you've got guys that you're trying to pay and keep them fed. And, on top of that, you've got your licensing fees, you've got your insurance, and so it's hard. It's really hard to keep things going if that is your sole source of income. And so I don't knock other shops for, some shops are just, the more cars that they can turn in and out, the more cars they can turn in and out, the more money they make and the more they can keep things rolling. I'm in a very, very blessed and unique situation, because I don't have to turn a car in and out in order to pay my mortgage, or, you know what I mean? So I have a rent on the space that I'm using, but it's very reasonable. My utility bills are very reasonable here for where I'm at on my business. And there have been some months where my household income had to help cover my business income. And that's a reality too that you need to kind of be aware of, because if you get into this business or a business, there may be some times where your household income has to cover your business expenses. I mean, and if you can't do that, then your business is gonna suffer for it. As of today, and again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but as of today, 6 years doing this legitimately, I have yet to pull a penny of money from the business and put in my pocket to go spend on whatever I want. Part of that's by design, and part of that is just because of where I'm at in my business and growing it. Every bit of money that I get in my business that is considered income to my business goes right back into my business. Tooling, rent, utilities, maintenance on my vehicle that I use for it, insurance that I have to cover, all of that money goes right back into it. Training that I send myself to, books that I get so that I can keep current and up to speed on standards and industry changes, all of that money goes right back into it. And then there are times when more extra money, which I don't have extra money. I don't know very many people who have extra money, but money coming from my household budget is then put into my business to keep things going. That's the reality of it. And that's the truth of, you got a couple options. You can go and you can take a loan from the bank. And if you're in a situation where you can do that and you can do so comfortably and you can see the numbers are going to work out, man, go for it. If not, then you've got to figure out a way to do it without breaking yourself and without causing, your household to suffer. It's possible is all I'm saying. I don't want to discourage nobody, but I'm not going to fluff nobody either. I don't want anybody thinking, oh wow, man, this guy's got it made. He's doing it. And it's not that easy. It's worth it for me because this is what I want to do. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of expense. There's a lot to this. So anyways, here we are. We're 6-7 years into this, and I am at the point now where, as of today, I'm here today, and I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a shot of what I got. So I have 2 vehicles in my shop right now today. The white car in the background there is a BMW 325i. This red vehicle right here is a Mitsubishi Outlander, and I'm not going to let you guys see license plates and stuff because I try to protect my customers' privacy. Anyways, so I have 2 jobs in my shop for today. The BMW is going to be hopefully not a long-term patient, but it has a electrical issue, crank no start, and I hope I don't hurt any BMW fans out there. I really do. I love BMWs. They are beautiful cars. After working on this is the 5th one I think I've worked on now. Yeah, I wouldn't own one. I love them. They're beautiful cars. They're such a pain in the tuchus. Oh my gosh. Anyways, this one's a crank and no start. I did an initial look at it in the owner's driveway, hoping that it was just a real simple, maybe a rubbed wire or whatever. And of course, that's not the case. So we had it towed down here, and I've got that to look on. The Mitsubishi that I'm working on today is it's an AC compressor replacement. I diagnosed it is that a word? Diagnosed it? Whatever, tomato. A couple weeks back, maybe a little bit longer than that. And it's a really cool, and this is why I get into this stuff, right? This was a simple, hey man, my AC kind of works sometimes, doesn't work sometimes. I think it might be low. And I know the guy who this car belonged, or actually who brought it to me, because I don't think it belongs to him. I think it belongs to a family member of his. Anyways, he's a sharp mechanic, This very vehicle, he had called me to work on another vehicle at his house, electrical problems, and he was doing head gasket and stuff in this vehicle for his family member. So he's a very good mechanic. He's savvy, but he's just, anything electrical, he doesn't want to mess with it. He told me a long time ago, hey man, if it's something like that, I'm going to get a hold of you and we'll set it up. So anyways, he brought it to me, and he said, I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit low on refrigerant. So we checked it out, and come to find out, it's a really cool deal. The compressor, the clutch on this is a magnetic clutch, and it's got an electrical coil that when it engages, draws the clutch plate in. Well, this one in particular, once it heats up, the coil will lose its charge. And so the compressor disengages, the coil cools off, and then it re-engages. And I had another Mitsubishi a few years back that I wasn't, again, and this is why I'm saying I have learned as I've gone through this business, and I continue to learn. I had another Mitsubishi. It was a newer one, but it was the exact same model, Mitsubishi Outlander. This was a few years back. This one I did not have a shop space, and it did something very similar to this, and I never caught the coil opening up. And we went through, this particular vehicle manufacturer uses a thermal circuit cutout on the compressor so that if it gets too hot, it'll open up and cause the compressor to disengage so that it doesn't damage the compressor, hopefully. We checked that out. The one that he had in that other vehicle, it didn't open up. It was the temperature on it was out. And so we replaced it, and it worked. And then all of a sudden, And then he moved out of the area, and I found out later on that he never, to my knowledge, never found out what it was. Fast forward a couple of years, and I have this vehicle, and he brings it in, and the guy who brings it to me, I looked at him, he brought it in, he's telling me what's going on, and it actually failed while it was here in my shop. And so I did some tests, and lo and behold, and I believe after seeing it do it to this vehicle, I believe that was what was going on with the other one. So anyways, I'm always learning. I'm always, remembering past cases that I've worked on, past jobs that I've worked on. And then when I get another job that comes in, and it's funny because, there's always that connect the dot moment where, oh, I remember when I saw this on another vehicle, 5 days ago, 5 weeks ago, 5 years ago. Anyways, so this is what I'm working on today. I didn't start out doing this today. I started out today doing some business stuff because I had to finalize some paperwork for my business to be able to accept credit cards and debit cards through a different vendor. So I had to do that. I had to follow up on some insurance paperwork. I mean, there's always something that I'm doing that is with my business. Today, I get to finish this up, and so I've got 2 jobs here. I've got another job that's a mobile job because it's a huge RV that I can't bring here because my shop's not big enough. Space isn't big enough to bring it in. And I've already posted a couple of videos on that. That's the wiring job on an RV. I will finish that up tomorrow. And this is what I want to kind of hopefully leave some of you guys with a little bit of encouragement that are looking at starting a business, or if you already started one, and you're wondering like, hey, is this ever going to pay off? It will if you stay at it. And there is always the possibility of failure. And if you're going into this without that realization, if you have this unrealistic expectation that there's no way you can fail, you need to really stop and sit down and have a reality break, because you can fail. I've come close to failing in this thing so many times it's not even funny. And I was in a shop space for a little while, and then I let it go and went back to mobile, and then I got to a point where I needed to have a shop space again. I almost didn't get a shop space because rent in this area is so stupid high. And that would have caused me not to be able to finish these jobs, which would have caused me to not be able to pay, for my insurance. And I mean, I can fail. It's a reality. But as I'm standing here today, like I said, I have 2 vehicles in my shop. I have another vehicle that's a mobile that's waiting for me to come finish it up. I have customers that are waiting for me to get them scheduled in. And then on top of that, I have just recently picked up a commercial account for a fleet type of a deal. And that has been a long, drawn out odyssey, but it's going to be worth it because they have a large fleet of vehicles that they want me to come and work on. That's where I'm at today. It's not always been, easy. In fact, I don't expect it never suddenly seems to get easy. I just kicked a job out of here last week that literally should have been a 1-day in and out job, and ended up being a 3-week odyssey. And because of parts issues, because of things that are outside of my control. And one of the challenges that I run into running my own business, I'm a one-man band. Greg's Mobile Automotive is me. I'm Greg. So that means I'm responsible for, all the work that gets done, the mechanical work that gets done, the diagnostics that gets done, setting up the appointments, scheduling all that stuff, and then chasing down part numbers, doing the ordering, getting the parts here, verifying they're correct, and then when they're not correct, having to go back. And I'm doing all this, did I mention, after I do a full, 8-9 hour day at my real job. And then, I go home and I still want to eat dinner and spend time with my wife and my dog. And, so if I had a full-time, if this was what I was doing full-time, a lot of these problems would not be as long and drawn out as they are. So anyways, I don't know what I'm going to title this video, and I don't even know, I probably don't have anybody left that's watching this all the way through. This is probably the longest video I will have ever posted. It's almost 35 minutes, and it's just basically me saying, hey, here I am, and this is what it kind of looks like, and this is where I am from where I started, and I still have a long ways to go. I want to leave a word of encouragement for anybody who's looking into starting their own business. If you have the abilities and the desire, I say do it. Go for it. Don't have regrets. Don't have regrets when it comes to your family. Don't have regrets when it comes to your career and your life and things you want to do. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. I think that's a big problem in our society today is too many people are scared to fail. And some of the best experiences I have ever had have come at the tail end of some of the most, oh wow, some of the worst failures I've ever experienced. And I mean that sincerely. And at the time I didn't see it, you fail, you hate to fail. If you're like me, if you're like the majority of people I know, we don't want to fail. We don't start something to lose, but it's going to happen. And don't let that be the reason why you don't start something. Anyways, I don't know where this is going, where this is ending, if it's of any value to anybody else but me. But there you go. Appreciate you listening. If you know me, you know my number, you know my email, get a hold of me. If you just want to tell me, hey man, I think you went, off on too many rabbit trails or whatever. Anyways, I appreciate it. Take care. Bye.